Greetings, and thank you for tuning into the Styles Financial Services Financial Flash Report. I'm John Stone, Senior Wealth Advisor, here with this week's report. This week, the global financial community is reflecting on the life and career of former Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan, who passed away Monday at the age of 100. For many wealth management professionals, the news prompted reflection on something broader than Chairman Greenspan himself. It prompted reflection on a remarkable transformation of the Federal Reserve, financial markets, and the investment landscape over the past 4 decades. In June of 1987, President Ronald Reagan nominated Alan Greenspan to succeed Paul Volcker as chairman of the Federal Reserve. In retrospect, it's difficult to overstate how different the Federal Reserve was at that time. The Federal Reserve certainly mattered, but it operated with far less visibility and transparency than investors experience today. Policy intentions were not explicitly communicated. Rather, they were left to inference, while the institution itself remained largely in the background of public discussion. Over the years that followed, the Federal Reserve became increasingly visible. Today, every Federal Reserve meeting is anticipated by investors around the world. Financial news organizations provide live coverage of policy announcements. Market participants scrutinize every policy position, every press conference, and often every word spoken by Federal Reserve officials. Prior to 1987, that simply was not the case. Only a few months into his tenure as Fed chair, Greenspan faced his first major challenge. In October of 1987, the stock market experienced one of the most significant one-day declines in history, Black Monday, when the Dow Jones average declined by more than 22% in one day, triggering global market declines and sparking fears of widespread economic instability. In response, the Federal Reserve injected massive reserves into the system and issued a brief but ultimately historic statement affirming its readiness to serve as a source of liquidity to support the economic and financial system. While those words may seem straightforward today, they represented an important moment in the midst of panic. Markets received reassurance directly from the nation's central bank during a period of extraordinary uncertainty. Chairman Greenspan's deliberately brief message was an early example of the growing importance of Federal Reserve communication. Ironically, Greenspan would later become famous for a communication style that was often intentionally difficult to interpret. His remarks became known as Greenspeak.
It's a language of purposeful obfuscation to avoid certain questions coming up which you know you can't answer.
Many investors and elected officials to whom Greenspan reported became familiar with commentaries such as, "If I've made myself too clear, you must have misunderstood me." Or, "Since I've become a central banker, I've learned to mumble with great incoherence." While humorous, those comments reflected a very deliberate philosophy. The Federal Reserve wanted flexibility. Markets listened carefully because even subtle changes in language could provide clues regarding future policy thinking. At the same time, however, forces outside the Federal Reserve were reshaping the investment landscape. Financial news networks launched. Participation in 401k plans expanded. Do-it-yourself mutual funds and brokerage firms became increasingly popular. Widespread internet access and mobile communications accelerated the speed and availability of financial information beyond anything previously imaginable. All this driving increased market interest among a newer set of investors. As media, technology, and investor participation evolved, so too did attention toward the Federal Reserve. What had once been a relatively obscure institution, followed primarily by economists, bankers, and market professionals, increasingly became a subject of daily discussion among investors, journalists, policymakers, and the public. By the end of Greenspan's tenure, the Federal Reserve had become one of the most closely followed institutions in the world. Greenspan's successors continued the evolution by significantly expanding communication and transparency. Press conferences, economic projections, published forecasts, detailed policy statements, and even future interest rate predictions became routine components of Federal Reserve communications. Today, investors have access to more information about Federal Reserve thinking than at any point in history, which makes recent developments under newly appointed Fed Chairman Kevin Warsh particularly interesting. Following his first FOMC meeting as chairman, Warsh indicated that the Federal Reserve may move toward less communication and less forward guidance than markets have become accustomed to over the past several decades. Whether this plays out in practice and proves meaningful remains to be seen, but it does create an interesting contrast when viewed against the broader history of Federal Reserve transformation. After decades of increasing transparency and communication, markets may now be entering a period in which monetary policymakers choose to speak less and allow markets to draw more of their own conclusions. Regardless of where that evolution leads, there is an important perspective worth remembering. Over the course of the past 4 decades, we have witnessed multiple Federal Reserve chairs, changing policy philosophies, evolving economic environments, market booms, market declines, financial crises, and periods of significant uncertainty. Throughout all those changes, effective wealth management has never depended upon accurately predicting every policy decision made by the Federal Reserve. Rather, successful wealth management has relied on intentional and comprehensive planning, maintaining discipline, proactive risk management, adapting thoughtfully to changing conditions, and remaining aligned and focused on long-term objectives. At Stiles Financial Services, we're committed to helping clients navigate changing environments while remaining focused on the factors that matter most for achieving their financial goals and objectives. Federal Reserve leadership will change. Policy approaches will evolve. Markets will continue to respond. But thoughtful planning, prudent decision-making, and alignment between resources and objectives remain enduring principles regardless of who occupies the Fed chair. Perhaps that is the most valuable perspective gained from observing 4 decades of Federal Reserve transformation. As always, thank you for tuning into this week's Financial Flash Report. I'm John Stone, and on behalf of the Stiles Financial team, here's to a happy and safe weekend.
Educational content by the professionals at Stiles Financial Services, delivering customized portfolios aligned to your unique wealth goals.